This is the Seven Figure Standard Podcast, hosted by Arash, Vossoughi and Mykie Stiller, with mindset and strategies to help you break through and create personal freedom.
Hello, and welcome back to the Seven Figure Standard Podcast. I'm Mykie Stiller, joined by my co-host, Arash Vossoughi, and we're so thrilled to be back with you for another episode. Today, we're going to get into an amazing topic. We're going to talk about belief. You can't create anything magnificent without a strong belief. But belief is also a little bit tricky because you can trick yourself into believing that you have belief on a conscious level when you really don't have it on a subconscious level. So, Arash, I'm really excited to get your take on this. And I'd love to start just by how did you get your belief?
I think it goes back to an episode we did a couple of weeks ago about association. My belief came from somebody and some buddies who were much further than I was. And it really becomes contagious. You pick up their belief along the way. And that's why it's so important. I had a certain level of belief in myself, but if you looked at my results, I was losing. So it wasn't a great belief. But there was something that I can look back now and be like, I was never that person who was like, I don't believe in my abilities at 100% level that I didn't believe. I just... What changed the game for me is I've been very transparent about it. I changed my associations of who I associated with. And that started with books. That's where it first started. I gained belief from reading books. And I remember I read Think and Grow Rich for the first time. And I said, just pick a number. And I believed it because I thought I was really good, probably my whole life, really unconsciously, of accepting ideas. And so I started reading high achieving, high performance books. And I think that's where my belief started that I could do something more. I know that's where it started. I don't think. And then I started listening to, this will outdate me quite a bit, but I started listening to CDs. And I was in outside sales at the time, and I would just be listening to CDs on performance, personal development constantly. Well, that increased my belief. Now, my results didn't change yet because I never transferred it. But that was the starting point of me around belief. See, I always tell people this. I can tell you looking back, it's easy to be great when you're around a lot of great people. And I think that's where it started for me, where I started changing the types of people I was around. And I started investing in myself significantly in time and money and putting myself in those environments. And that's where my belief started. Mike, I remember when I first met my mentor, he said to me, you don't need to believe this. You just need to believe that I believe I can show you how. And so I put all my faith into his belief. And I always tell our clients to do the same. Because I know if they do what I tell them, they're going to win. And it almost felt like for me, it took this pressure off of me. Like, okay, you don't have to do this by yourself. And that's why I think environment and association is so critical. So for me, that's where it was.
I really love that. And I can relate to that so much. I'd like to know, how much do you think that belief translates to your comfort zone? Meaning, I feel like you can only have as much belief as you are able to within your comfort zone. And once you step out of your comfort zone, your belief level grows a little bit with each step outside you go. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I agree with that because certain people don't go out of their comfort zone because there's their level of belief. They want to play it safe. They want to play not to lose. And so I would agree with that. I think this all comes down to awareness, and we spoke about it a little bit on our last conversation. But when we're talking about belief, we're talking about awareness. An elite performer is sprinting towards getting out of their comfort zone. An average performer wants to stay there. I was at a charity event this last weekend. My brother puts on this amazing event. I think there was like 300 people. Anyway, I was talking to a gentleman who's created a very great business for themselves. And he was asking me for advice. And I said, well, what's your goal? And he gave me the number. And I said, well, what's the most you've done? And he told me, I said, that's not a good goal. I said, all you're doing is thinking linearly. And I said, this is your belief. And he said, I want to work with you. And I told him to come to our world-class wealth event. I said, I'll help you. But anyway, I said, do you not see that your belief is linear right now? You're saying, let me work harder. Then my next question was, how many hours are you working? He said, you don't want to know. And he said, I'm working 14 hours a day. I said, I believe that. I said, because your belief is, I'm going to doggedly do it harder. How many of us can relate to that? Growing up, we've been trained with this belief, the harder you work, the better you're going to get. And it's the biggest fallacy. You've got to work smarter, not harder. We've got to work on quality, not quantity. And so that's a belief. And that's a philosophy that has to change in our belief system. But how many of us are reevaluating our belief system and saying, does that belief system still serve me? And that's where we want to go. We want to constantly reevaluate our belief system, because that belief system may have served you in the past to get you to where you wanted to go back then. But if you want to go much further, your belief is going to have to grow much further. It cannot stay what got you here. What got you here is not going to take you to somewhere much greater.
So, Raj, you have your belief system, right? And beliefs come from all sorts of places, maybe from when you were growing up, from different experiences you've had, a failure you've had, a success you've had could create a positive belief in you. And this becomes your life philosophy. But in addition to your life philosophy, you have just a belief in if you can or can't do something, right? You set a goal and immediately you think to yourself, I believe that, or I'm pushing it a little bit. So how imperative is it that you believe in your goals or believe in the achievement of your goals for them to actually come true?
It's essential. The first step in developing belief is to achieve your world-class goal, that goal you want more than anything else. You first have to accept the idea and sell yourself on the idea that it is done. See, that's the first step. If we say to ourselves, I want to achieve something much higher, when things align, when this happens, that's not belief. That's delusion. We come from either one. This is very important to understand. We're always coming throughout our day through either want or need. Want creates abundance. Need creates scarcity. I need to do this. Want is something that develops your standard. I want this more than anything else, that I'm willing to do whatever it takes. I will pay the price of developing that discipline. And then the second step is you've got to understand your programming is going to fight you. I mean, it's going to fight you like hell. It is going to start trying to get you to rationalize. Every time you're rationalizing, you've got to pick that up in your awareness. I'm coming from need. That's coming from the old version of me. And your dream has to become a relentless obsession. If it's not a relentless obsession, your programming is going to win. The old program is going to win. So that's the second step. The third step is you must take control over the program and replace it. Well, how do you replace it? You think, feel, and act like the person you want to become. You only accept ideas that are in harmony with the person you want to become. And that may be that you're getting a lot of hate. There may be people picking at you, looking at what's wrong. But they don't pick and look at what's wrong with the people who are doing nothing. That means you're going in the right direction. Like I always talk about, if you're not being hated on, you're not doing anything extraordinary. And a lot of people shrink to that. They go, I don't want to be hated. I'm not telling you you want to be hated. That's their perception. So you can't worry about it. And that goes into your self-image. But we have to get on the frequency of our goal and stay there. How do you stay there? You've got to think like that person. That's why several episodes back, I talked about really embodying the power of 5. That's where every decision comes from your goal. Every attitude comes every day. I want you to build your swagger up. That builds your belief up. Build that attitude, build that confidence. And you do that through action. You do that through doing uncomfortable things in a better way each day. Do uncomfortable things in a great way. Every day, just get 1% better. You're going to change that. Then you look at your standard. Are you dropping? Well, that's not a standard. Remember that. Anytime you drop, that's a program, not a standard. Standards is our commitment. It's our code of ethics. Then you look at your identity. Is your identity matched to your goal? Well, you do all these with the right discipline. You're going to build not just belief, significant belief. But the great thing about belief is we want to really write down things that we never believed before, then we did it. Like go back to those experiences and write them down, because every time you doubt yourself, you can look back at it and say, well, I doubted myself here, but I still did it. We want to really write down the extraordinary things we've done. It will change your level of belief for the new things, because it's the same way, just in a different form.
All right, Arash, we've talked before on here about how we have to detach from the five senses and get into our higher faculties. And I want to talk about that as it relates to belief specifically. It's really easy to hold up your phone and say, oh, I believe this phone case is purple because I can see it with my eyes. Or I believe there's essential oils diffusing in my office right now because I can smell them. So it's easy to believe something when you can see it, you can feel it, it's in your physical world. How do you believe in something that you've never achieved before? How do you believe in something that you can't see, that feels really far away, that you have no experience of?
Okay, so let's look at that for a second. If somebody's colorblind, they'd say, no, that's not purple.
Yeah, good thing. But
okay, I'm just saying, for them, their belief would be like, I can't even see what it is, right?
Yeah.
Well, think about what's invisible in our world that's real. Fear is invisible, but people can see it. They can feel it.
Yeah.
Well, it's the same thing with our goal. Our thoughts are invisible. You can't see your thoughts, but you know them. So everything, winning is invisible. Mm-hmm. Like if I said to you, what is winning? Somebody will relate it to an association they have to winning, but that's invisible. Losing's invisible. They'll know what it feels like. So it's the same thing. We got to get in the feeling of what we want. See, what we want is the most important thing we can ever connect to is our wants. Our wants come from the essence of who we are. But when we're letting our senses say this is true or this is false, that's a huge error. But it's an error in programming at a young age. Well, I can't see how this is going to happen. No, you've got to move mountains for it to happen. You've got to build your faith muscle. What is faith? It's invisible. Well, faith is the only thing that creates belief. So, the funny question is, belief, how do you get belief? You've got to do it. Like nobody can give you belief. I can't give you belief. Now, you can believe in my belief through the transfer of energy, and you can make it your own, sure. You can get it that way by accepting that suggestion. But you have to do the deep inside work. That deep inside work is removing scarcity from your life. Nothing stops people more than suffering. They're accepting the idea of suffering. They're constantly seeing what's wrong. They're constantly seeing, I can't do this. Why not turn it around? And a great question I want to ask everyone is, do you want to be right or do you want to be successful? They're two different things. A lot of people want to be right. They say, no, you don't know my situation. It's not about your situation. Your situation is from the past. It's about who you want to become. And it demands you to believe in something much greater than what you've seen. That's why belief does not come from our five senses. Belief comes, like my belief right now, to this point, will come from experiences. But to build the experiences I've created at this point, I had to go to the invisible. I had to go when things were rough. Even when things were great, I wanted to make them greater. So I had to build a greater belief in myself. And you've got to get comfortable with who you are. You've got to get comfortable with changing. You've got to get comfortable with having a great amount of money in your life. You've got to get comfortable of saying no to people that do not serve you. You've got to get comfortable in these. And that's what your belief is going to build into.
So let's say someone sets a goal that they have no experience with. It's a great goal. It's a great stretch goal. And they feel scared immediately. Do they need to get into the feeling of the goal achieved to fabricate that feeling of good until the feeling takes them over? Is that?
Well, first of all, if you're feeling scared, you're in the right direction. That's what you've got to be aware of. You're not going to feel scared of things you've never done. And every goal will tell me that I don't have the confidence yet. So I get to build the confidence. And you want to hear my word, I get to. That's part of the growth process. The most important things with goals are who we become in the process. It's not what we get. The most exhilarating process of a goal is the pursuit of the goal. I mean, there's studies about the release of dopamine is where people literally will get depressed after they achieve their goal because they haven't set a new goal, but their dopamine release was in the pursuit of their greatness. That's what we are on this journey as humans. We're looking for that exhilarating experience. The goal achievement process is like a drug. It's this release energy. Like anybody can think about that, Mike. Think about a time where something was far greater for you and you did it, how good you felt in the process of doing. Somebody asked me last week, I was working with one of my clients one-on-one, and he said, how long do you celebrate your goals? I said, not very long, maybe 24 hours. I have a 24-hour rule because I know if I stay in the celebration of it too long, then I'm going to go backwards. So it's never about the goal to me. To me, a goal is just a goal. Now, it's important to me because I have to fall in love with the goal, but I don't give it more precedence than I give myself. For me, it's about the development of me. That's what I've learned to create belief. And that's why I tell people, if you study elite performers, I call them peak performers. And if you study peak performers, the one commonality is they are distinctly aware people. Like they're so aware of themselves. And they're aware of when they're slipping. They're aware when they're really in a good space. They're aware of if they've outgrown their environment. And that awareness comes from doing that. I want you to hear this. You've got to commit to doing that deep internal work. Giving into the five senses is not work. That's just reacting. That's not hard to do. But let me give you an example. When you're hated on and you just laugh about it, that's a good thing. Like I have a close friend, John Dugan, and I didn't know, I wasn't even aware I was doing this. He goes, you're always saying just laugh about it. Because I do. I just laugh about it. You just got to laugh about it and pivot forward. We've got to look forward. And I can look at something and I'll be like, oh, I just laugh. You got to laugh about it sometimes. So I think that's a good attitude to have because you're not allowing something to be bigger than you are. So belief is essential, but it's so tied into commitment. You're not going to build belief without going to the invisible. You're not going to build belief without doing that deep intrinsic internal work. You've got to go deep into that. Some people will tell me, oh, I study 5 hours a day. I said, that's too long. You're not going to take action if you're studying 5 hours a day. I said, I'm studying all day long, but I'm studying myself. That's how I can understand where my belief is around something. So I highly recommend doing the deep internal work because that's what's going to create the life you want to live.
This is so good, Arash. Okay, so we've talked before about identity and self-image and how you can never outperform your identity or your self-image. And it's something that you always have to work on. You don't get to a point where you're like, oh, okay, I'm done working on my self-image, because as long as you're setting new goals, bigger goals, you're going to have to build your self-image to get there. You build your identity to get there. Is belief the same way? Or do you build a belief, like an overarching belief, and then you're kind of like, okay, now I've built belief and I've got it? Or are you always working on belief like you're always working on identity?
Well, you can't build belief without increasing your identity. It doesn't work. To do the hard things, you're increasing your identity. To do the easy things, you're not increasing it. So they work hand in hand together. Belief happens as you grow your self-image. Remember, self-image is the foundation. You have to, I said it earlier in step one. I said the first thing you have to do is you have to sell yourself on the idea that it's a done deal. When you set a goal, you're not going to the goal, you're coming from the goal. It is done. Now you never think about it not happening. You don't think about being separate from it. Everything you do comes from the goal. Every action, every thinking pattern, everybody in your association who is growing you. And you don't want to be intimidated by the goal. You don't want to be intimidated by other people's success. You want to learn from them. You want to ask them critical questions. Great achievers are great people because they've done the inside work. You want to learn from them. You don't want to let your results dictate whether they're better than you or not. We're all the same. We're all one. And once we understand that, we set ourselves up to win.
Okay. And then my last question around this is what is the difference between belief and faith?
Well, it takes faith to build belief. Faith is seeing something you've never seen. You can't build belief without faith. Faith is seeing the invisible, seeing what you want all day long, even though you can't see it with your physical eyes. And it's believing in the incredible. What's incredible? Your subconscious mind is at your age. So you need to understand how your mind works. What's incredible? You have all these people who are going to be in the fulfillment of your goal that you haven't even met yet. You have all these new ideas. You have this deeper gear to get to. That's what's incredible. And you'll achieve what the masses call impossible, that we call standard, where we have this expectation that everything we do, we know if we follow the creation process and do the inside work, the outside has to match. That's by law. So that's what I think faith is. I mean, everybody can look at their life. You know, you could look at anything you've done extraordinary. It started with faith. It started with saying, I am sick and tired of being sick and tired. And now I can tell you, this can go in a whole new direction, but where does change happen? It happens from pain. That's where change starts. It starts with a pain. It starts with this dissatisfaction. Where we can use it as such a power force in our life is we turn that pain into being inspirationally dissatisfied, where I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired. That's where all of a sudden, the person who never had faith, all of a sudden activates their faith muscle. And how you gain the greatest power is by activating that muscle. But you have to have a big enough why to do it. And that's where the pain can be used as a very good thing in our lives.
So good. All right, Arash, let's get into an action step for today.
You know, I already gave it. I encourage you to write down the things you really have achieved before that you thought were impossible at one time. And then ask yourself, and I want you to start reevaluating your belief and say, does my current belief around X match where I want to go? And then all you have to do is replace it. How do you replace it? You remove and replace it by building a new program. You think, feel, and act, and use the power of 5. But write down that list first, and then start working on reevaluating your beliefs. At one point, those things that you achieved were quote unquote impossible. Now they're possible. And that's what I would recommend.
So good. All right, Arash, thank you so much. Thank all of you for joining us for another episode of the 7-Figure Standard podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave us a rating and a review, share it with your friends and family, and we'll see you back next week for another episode. Thanks, Arash.
Thanks, Mykie.
Thank you for listening to this episode of 7-Figure Standard. We hope you found the insights and strategies helpful on your journey to success. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave us a rating and review on your favorite podcast platform to help us reach more people like you. To learn more about Arash and Mykie and how Voss Coach & Co. can help you achieve your goals and reach new levels of success, visit vosscoachandco.com. Thank you again for listening, and we'll see you on the next episode of 7-Figure Standard.